Thanks for coming. Hi. Apropos of nothing, we are sitting in a old J.C. Penney. This used to be a J.C. Penney showroom. So we're going to have more exciting conversation than we would if we were talking about J.C. Penney's, though.
Maybe.
Is
We'll
it
find out.
pennies or penny? I don't know.
I think it's penny.
Oh, okay.
Singular. One penny.
One penny.
Yeah.
I'm Jason Harris, co-founder and CEO of Mechanism. We're a mid-size advertising agency. And I'm joined here with Elliot Hamlish. Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
EVP and Chief Commercial Officer at Amtrak. And we're going to talk about trains for the next 30 minutes or so. So I like to start out, Elliot, as you know, with a little bit about you before we get into Amtrak. So tell me about your origin story and how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Origin story. It's
Yeah.
a good one. Well, first of all, hello. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Good to be here. So origin story. I'll take you back to my childhood. So I grew up in Ithaca, New York. No Amtrak train service, unfortunately. Working on it. 3 or 4 decades, maybe. But I grew up in a house with a psychiatrist father and a social worker mother. So you can just imagine our dinner time conversations. Lots of psychoanalysis. But therein, in those early days of my childhood, was born my interest in people, decision making, what makes people tick. And that sort of grew into an interest in consumer behavior and decision making more broadly. So I ended up majoring in psychology in college. My first job out of school was in a strategic planning group where basically everything we did was think about how to improve the customer experience. That was at American Express, a very brand-forward organization. Ended up going into consulting for a number of years in customer strategy, and then worked for a number of big brands, Starwood and Wyndham in the hospitality space, AMC Theaters, the movie theater company, again, a very customer experience-focused organization. And then joined Amtrak just about a year ago, where I'm bringing that hospitality experience to the wide world of passenger rail, which has been fun.
That's really interesting. So when you thought about, you were at Wyndham and then AMC.
Yep.
And then when this job opportunity came up, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, this was cool. This is like one of those calls that you look forward to getting, which is you've got an opportunity to take a brand that has been around for decades, a legacy brand, right? Everyone knows, 90+% of people know Amtrak. And you've got an opportunity to transform that, right? Take a brand that has been historically known for a number of things and transform the consumer mindset to think about it differently. And oh, by the way, you just got $66 billion of investment from the government to basically rethink what passenger rail looks like in the US, and just from a platform perspective, pretty cool opportunity, not only from an infrastructure perspective, but also from a branding and consumer experience standpoint. Just a cool gig, and it's played out that way thus far.
What are some things you took from your previous gigs that apply to your gig now?
Yeah. So my team hears this from me all the time, and they probably are getting tired of it. But we're on a mission to take the company from what has been historically known as a transportation provider to what will become a hospitality powerhouse. And so much of my hospitality experience and movie theater experience, turns out movie theaters are actually a lot like hotels, are actually a lot like trains in a lot of ways. So there's a common thread as you think about the experience across.
You're trying to get asses in seats. That's the common
asses
thread?
in seats.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad we're here because I don't think I could say that without getting some sort of slap on the wrist or legal.
I can say
department.
it.
You can say it. Yeah, you can do anything you want.
You didn't say it.
That's great. But yeah, butts and seats, just like heads in beds,
right.
Just like butts in a different seat in a movie theater, and it's all around the customer experience. We spend a lot of our time thinking about us not being we get you from point A to point B, which is what transportation companies do, but actually thinking about the journey and the experience along the way. So much of what our team focuses on is from the moment you book to the moment you're sitting in the seat for your entire journey, station A, station B. What is that experience, and how can we really amp it up in a differentiated way?
to make it feel like hospitality and not transportation.
That's exactly
the goal.
Service with a smile.
And so you're Amtrak's a quasi-public corporation. What does that mean?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
got that from the website. So I have to read
it's
something.
it's true. That sounds like something we put on our website.
Yeah.
So we couldn't exist without government funding. Our board is literally appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate. Secretary Buttigieg sits on our board, right? So we will forever, at least for the foreseeable future, forever and always be inextricably linked with the U.S. government, and we're thankful for that. At the same time, we're on a mission. We operate in as other private companies do, we're trying to get to profitability. Turns out that's hard in our business. But over time, we're getting closer and closer to break even, which is still crazy to think about. Right? We're a multi-billion-dollar company, and we're trying to get back to zero. Right? That's the objective from a train operation.
But that makes sense, though, because you think about 2,100 miles of train track, 300 trips a day. I mean, you think about you're moving the country, and so that must be a hard proposition and you can only charge so much to get the asses in seats.
Yeah.
So it probably is it's like a massive undertaking to get to profitability, right?
I'm going to overshare, if that's okay. I just wrote, for our year-end reviews, I needed to write a self-reflection letter to our CEO and president with my reflections of the year past.
Did that come from your family dinner table psychoanalysis?
Yes, it did. I was laying on a couch as I wrote.
And you're like, I think we should do letters.
Yes. Yeah. It was very Freudian.
Yeah.
So the first words of this letter after Dear Stephen and Roger, CEO and president, was, wow, this is a complicated business. A year in, I've just been, in a way, surprised, in a way, anticipated some version of it. But it is not only hard to get a train from A to B on time, which we do sometimes, not all the time, working on that, but from just a day-to-day operations on my team, which is the commercial organization, there's a lot to think about. And it's hard and complex, and it's part of why I love it. And it's what makes it fun every day. What
is the best part of your job? What's the thing you like the most?
The people are excellent. And I've found that in pockets at many of the organizations that I've been a part of. The dedication, the passion, the excitement, not only for the industry, but for enhancing the customer experience is pretty excellent. And I've just, again, really found the people that I work with to be an enjoyable crew.
What's the hardest thing about your job?
All of it. All of it.
The job.
The job,
the
yeah.
hardest thing.
It's interesting. I know we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the work that we're doing. We've got 700 capital projects going on right now. So a few years ago, that number, this is before IIJA funding, which is the $66 billion that came in 2021, we had 4 or 5 big capital projects. That number is 700 now, right? So in a world where you're trying to get the train from A to B in an enjoyable way where everything works and the booking process is smooth and people smile and they say welcome aboard and they thank you for your loyalty. That's hard when you've got bridges and tunnels that are out of commission and being redone and the train needs to stop here for any number of reasons. And multiply that by the 21,000 miles of track that we operate on across the country. That's difficult, right? And so we're again on this mission to become a hospitality powerhouse. And when you've got 700 capital projects ongoing, turns out it's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
So you have also really aggressive goals. I know you had 28 million passengers last year. You're going to have almost 33 this year. And then by 2040, your goal is to double that to 66.
Big numbers.
So is that just more trains? Is that like, how do you get those numbers?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Oh, okay, all right.
Some
idea.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll find out. I'll tell you in 15 years. But yeah, we're going to hit just shy of 33 million passengers this year. To your earlier point, our goal is to get to 66 million, so double that number by 2040. There's no way we could possibly do that with the number of routes and the number of trains that we have now. So our demand in many cases outstrips our capacity, meaning there are more people who want to ride the train. This is why a lot of Amtrak trains that you're on,
That seems
certainly
like
in the
a
Northeast corridor.
fantastic business problem.
It's a good problem to have, within reason, I guess. But yeah, what we need more routes, we need more trains, and we need to run increasingly efficient service. And so all of that is on a roadmap that there are lots of different versions of with different rates of growth and different curves, which I won't bore you all with. But it's a lofty goal, and we're excited for the next 16 years to pursue it.
Hit that goal, that's achievable. Yeah. What is your T-shirt? Let them know what your T-shirt says.
Yeah. Make your next, what does it say? Maybe your next flight should be on a train.
So is
For sale now in the Amtrak merchandise store.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
How much is that shirt? I'm just kidding. So is part of your job getting people to think about taking a train versus flying?
Yeah, so
is it more of driving or flying that you're trying to get people to reconsider?
Yes.
Obviously, yes.
Yes, yeah. So some interesting stats. So I mentioned the $66 billion that the rail industry got from the IIJA funding in 2021. That $66 billion brings the total amount of funding from the government in rail infrastructure to $120 billion in the last 50 years, right? So that 66 doubled the amount of funding that the industry received from the government over that time period, right? So $120 billion in 50 years. Audience participation. How much money do you think Europe got in government funding over the last 20 years from its governments collectively? So 120 billion in 50 years here. How much in the last 20 years in Europe? Any guesses? No guesses. 200. A trillion, that's it. $1 trillion, right? So it just gives you a sense for the magnitude.
You definitely looked that up.
Of difference. Not fair. You're not allowed to guess. So $1 trillion just gives you perspective on just the sheer volume, right, magnitude of difference between investment in Europe versus investment here. Juxtapose that with our investment in highways, $1.3 trillion in the last 20 or so years in highways in the US, right? So to your question around who are we competing against, just purely from an infrastructure perspective, there are structural challenges that we have as a mode of transportation relative to auto. We're just a very car-centric ecosystem, right? And on top of that, obviously we've got trip time challenges, meaning it takes a lot longer to get from New York to LA on a train than it does to get from New York to LA on a plane. And that makes it hard too, right? So there are some origin and destination pairs or geographies where we can be really competitive and others where we can be less competitive. And we try to differentiate in those cases on experience, which again will be dependent on.
And that's where the hospitality shift comes into. You want to have a better experience on a train than going through TSA, getting there early, getting harassed, the plane.
Yeah, who likes that, right?
Or traffic in a car, even though there's all this infrastructure money pouring into highways, it's more enjoyable on the train. That's the idea.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
And your trains go about what, 100 up to 100, they go 110 up to 140, 150?
The Acela just outside of our door here goes up to 150 miles an hour.
Okay. And then you have a new Acela.
We've got a new Acela coming in just a few short months.
And how fast does that go?
That will go up to 160 miles an hour. So exciting growth there.
So that's a big differentiator, right?
Yeah.
Because that will start to make the commute time shorter, the experience better, and the time shorter.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the goal, right?
Yep.
Okay. You just launched a new brand platform, Retrain Travel.
We
We
just launched
we worked
a new
on
brand
it.
platform.
This is about you, not Mechanism.
It's about us.
But of course.
It's about us.
Can you tell me how does that come to life? What does that mean to you, Retrain Travel?
Yeah. So I think you touched on it a bit before, which is people don't love the flying experience and people don't love the driving experience. And for a lot of folks who haven't experienced trains before, they don't necessarily know that it's better in a lot of ways, right? We chatted just a few minutes ago about how we operate in a very auto-centric environment, ecosystem, where people are used to jumping in their car and they're used to hopping on a plane for wherever they happen to be going. And the sort of central premise of Retrain travel is those aren't great in a lot of ways, and trains are great in a lot of ways. And so the premise is, how do we take this concept of travel that has become really negative in a lot of people's minds and retrain the way people think? Cute, what we did there with train, right?
Yeah.
Retrain, get it? Yeah, it's good.
I think they like it.
They like it, I know.
Yeah, they like it.
At least the first couple rows like it. Can't see it back, but they like it too.
You know all of the people in the first group.
I do.
That doesn't really count. Okay.
No, it doesn't, yeah. But that's the premise. Is how do we retrain the traveling public's conception of what train travel is and can be under that platform.
And how do you think about Amtrak started in 1971?
71, yeah.
And so it has a lot of heritage. And you think about it, we've all been, I'm assuming everyone's been on an Amtrak in this audience, yeah. So
The first couple rows have.
You think you know about it, but you're trying to modernize it and talk to a next generation. How do you think of balancing that heritage with the future?
Yeah, in some ways we don't have to balance it, because some of our trains are still operating from even the late 1980s, right? So we've got some really old trains, which also make this transition to hospitality powerhouse hard, right? We're doing a lot of obviously they've been refreshed, and there's a lot of work that's been done on them to bring them to sort of somewhat the modern era. But there's a legacy that will forever and always persist, which is the romanticism of jumping on a train, right? You've got big picturesque windows that you don't have on a plane and you don't have in a car. There are places that trains go to that planes and cars can't. I was on a trip recently from Denver out to Sacramento, and you can't go through the Rocky Mountains in any way that even remotely resembles train travel through that part of the country. And it's beautiful and it's picturesque, and the big, again, picturesque windows are not something that you can get from other modes of transportation. And so there's that sort of paying homage to the legacy, right, and the romanticism of train travel, while at the same time we're doing a tremendous amount of work and making a significant dollar investment in better infrastructure, better trains, right? We've got the new Acela coming out in just a few months. We've got 83 new sets of what we call our Aero trains coming out starting in the beginning of 2026. And then we're in the midst of a long distance fleet procurement, which in the early 2030s will completely transform our long distance train sets. So in the next couple of decades, also the first company I've worked for where I say things like in the next couple of decades, lot of private companies thinking about, right, what do we do next quarter?
Yeah.
And it's actually really, just a quick aside, it's really refreshing working for a company that's not focused on focused on the next quarter's results, but that's not the singular focus, right? The emphasis really is on how over the next 10, 20, 30 years can we double ridership? How do we take this $66 billion of investment, pour it back into infrastructure and new fleet to transform the way that people get from A to B, and really be focused on the experience, not just the transformative or the transportation aspect of it. So yes to legacy, and yes to transforming the way we do things.
And so when you think about, just want to touch on the next gen Acela and the kind of promise, because whenever you're transforming a company, you have to have products that are the sort of epitome of where you're going, because not all, you mentioned how many trains and 21,000
miles of track.
21,000 miles of track, all the trains, you go to, 500 destinations. How do you think about the, kind of the gold standard, the next gen Acela? What will that offer that only that train will offer?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we have a lot of customer data, right? So we went out and asked all of our customers, subset of our customers, what do you like, what don't you like, right? And that really was sort of the catalyst or the first stage of what we're calling next gen Acela should be, right? So as you think about the legacy of Acela trains, you think about the rest of our trains, what do you like, what don't you like, and what are the opportunities for us to enhance that experience? So it goes faster, it's more comfortable, right? So will quickly not be able to speak to the technical aspects of it, but they tell me it's better technically in lots of different ways. Smoother ride, the food and beverage offerings are better. We're going to have self-service checkout, which is differentiated relative to other modes of transportation. And remember those 700 capital projects that we've been talking about. Eventually, this train is going to run on tracks that are better. It's all electrified, right? So there's, from a sustainability perspective, there's no carbon emissions. That is a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I'm happy to chat more about if it's helpful. But we're on a path to net zero from a carbon emissions perspective by 2045. And as a mode of transportation, it's a significant area of focus for us.
There's nothing better than that. So speaking of that, do you talk about that in your, sustainability? Do you talk about that in getting people to ride trains, or is that not sort of as critical of a message?
No, it's super critical. What's interesting is, so we did a customer segmentation exercise recently and found that there's a subset of customers that really care a lot about sustainability, and others that don't necessarily care as much as one might anticipate. We, as a mode of transportation, are really differentiated from a sustainability perspective. Couple of interesting statistics. So 30% of our country's carbon emissions come from the transportation sector. 92% of that 30% come from cars, trucks, and planes, right? So big number. 2% of that 30% come from trains. And in the Northeast Corridor, we're fully electrified. That's something that will continue to grow. It's expensive to electrify train tracks, so the intent is to continue to grow that in more geographies. But because of that really small carbon footprint, we find big corporations, right? So tech companies, financial services companies, all the ones that you've heard of, many of them are focused on, if you're working for that organization and traveling less than 300 miles, you can't fly. Like literally not allowed from a corporate policy perspective. And so we're finding in a lot of those cases, they're transitioning to rail, which is great for us and great for...
They can't do that because of the carbon footprint.
Right, because they all have, many of them have net zero, right? We're trying to decrease our carbon footprint as well.
It's good for you.
It is good for us.
Yeah.
Good for us and good for them.
Yeah.
We also launched a partnership recently with Google. We've got a direct integration with Google now, where when you search for a flight anywhere in the Northeast, it actually pops up with a little green leaf, nice little green leaf, and Amtrak options for that immediately below the search results, encouraging people to take the train to decrease their carbon footprint relative to flights.
I bet the airline industry hates that.
No comment.
Okay, fine. So are there other innovations, any personal, you have all this data, right? Are you doing anything from a digital personalization standpoint with your consumer?
Yeah.
As well.
We've got our head of digital, Jessica Davidson, sitting right here in the second row. She's part of that first two rows.
Yes.
And that her team is focused on exactly that, right? How can we make the booking process increasingly frictionless? How can we personalize guests' experiences? That's another thing we're changing. They're not passengers anymore. In some cases, they're customers, but we're trying to transition to calling them guests, just like hospitality companies call the folks that stay with them, because that's how we want to treat people. But again, Jessica's team is focused very squarely on how do we make target our messaging more effectively, enhance our customer communications, and increasingly personalize the way that we engage with our guests. And that data that we talked about a few minutes ago really sits at the core of our ability to do that well.
Is there something surprising? How long have you been at Amtrak?
September 26th was a year, so just over a year.
Okay, so just over a year. Yeah. What's something that surprised you about coming over that was more maybe advanced or together or modern than you thought previously before taking the role?
Yeah, a lot of things have surprised me. It's just reiterating an earlier point, but the ability to focus on the company's focus on not next month, but on next year and 5 years and 10 years out is something that most publicly traded companies or private entities don't focus on, right? It's often really short term, and so that's been a
So
nice.
you don't have to think about shareholder numbers quarter to quarter.
Well, what's interesting is our shareholders are Congress, right? So that's an interesting change for me as well.
Right.
Haven't spent a lot of time thinking about Congress as shareholders. So they care, right? And they care about their districts and their sort of congressional areas of focus. And it matters to them how many riders we have and how we're servicing or not servicing in the case of areas that are looking to expand. So that matters a lot, but it's less about reading out to the public or a set of shareholders our results from this past month were X, and more about how much progress are we making on those 700 capital projects, or how do we look on our glide path to 66 million riders in 2040. And that is substantially more of a focus here than any other company that I've worked for, which again has been quite refreshing.
And that's been great. Going back to the quasi-government piece for a second, are there things that are harder to get done maybe than you thought, working in the Amtrak ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah. There are hard things to get
Or
done
are you like, hey,
anywhere.
Hey, Pete, let's just do this.
Yeah, hey, Pete, right,
Let's
exactly.
just do this thing, yeah.
Exactly right. He and I went to college together, interestingly.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Same graduating class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you know each other?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
No. But there was a time where I could have said, hey, Pete.
Yeah.
Now it's, hey, Mr. Secretary.
Okay.
Yeah. Not even, hey, hi, Mr. Secretary, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You make him write a letter?
Yeah, no, he doesn't have to write a letter. No, we write our letters to him.
Oh, you write it to him?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. You guys, by the way, you hear a lot about Amtrak Joe, a lot of how much love, obviously, the president has for Amtrak. Secretary Buttigieg is not far behind. Just an amazing amount of passion and dedication to not only the Department of Transportation broadly, but he's a huge Amtrak fan, which is super helpful for us.
Yeah.
I also don't remember the question that you asked 30 seconds ago.
Oh, just, it doesn't matter. We'll
Okay,
move on.
cool. Great.
So I feel like older generations have a lot of love for trains, right? Like, I think about like the guy down the street when in my suburban home in Virginia had like miles and miles of tracks set up in his basement. Not miles, but fake miles.
Uh-huh.
I feel like the older generation has that love of travel on trains, and it's got this nostalgic thing to it. Do you feel like the younger generation is getting that back, starting to look at trains as that nostalgic, great mode of transportation?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a little bit of two things. One is, yes, I think, and that's actually one of the central sort of premises of Retrain Travel, is introducing train travel to a younger generation that may not have experienced in the past. And so not only is it we're changing what you might have experienced historically for the older generation as train travel and making it new and different and better, but for those that haven't experienced it before, it's also great for a lot of reasons, right? So again, they're growing up in an environment where cars are commonplace and planes are commonplace, but they may not have experienced Amtrak before. And so again, one of the central premises of this campaign and platform is how do we introduce train travel to a group of young folks that haven't experienced it in the past. They also tend to care a lot about sustainability, right? And so that sustainability messaging we have found really resonates with the younger audience.
That's great. All right, last question. Do you have a mantra or a quote that drives you, that you always think about?
Good one. I always go back to the same one, which is an oldie, but it's a Wayne Gretzky quote, which is, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And I have shared that with my kids, and I believe it to my core, which is you gotta give it a try, right? Whatever it is. We spend a lot of time testing, right? And maybe the A test works, and maybe the B test works, or maybe they both don't work, and that's okay, right? You can learn from your mistakes and do it differently the next time. So I really like that concept.
But the worst thing is not trying.
Not trying. That's exactly right.
All right. Well, thanks. We learned a lot about you, the train industry and Retrain Travel. So thanks for your time. Give it up for Elliot Hamlich.
Thank you. Appreciate it.